everybody, the real Slim Shady here. Today, I'm reading Percy Jackson in the Olympian series. I'm going to do chapter per video. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. It's the first one. So, alrighty. I'm going to read the chapter 2. And then I'll post another one. To Haley, who heard the story first. Okay. So, this chapter is going to be called, I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now. Believe whatever lie your mom or dad told you about your birth, and try to lead a normal life. Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time, it gets you killed in painful, nasty ways. If you're a normal kid reading this because you think it's fiction, great, read on. I envy you for being able to believe that none of this ever happened. But if you recognize yourself in these pages, if you feel something stirring inside, stop reading immediately. You might be one of us, and once you know that, it's only a matter of time before they sense it too, and they'll come after you. Don't say I didn't warn you. My name is Percy Jackson. I'm 12 years old. Until a few months ago, I was a boarding student at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. Am I a troubled kid? Yeah, you could say that. I could start at any point in my short, miserable life to prove it, but things really started going bad last May, when our 6th grade class took a field trip to Manhattan. 28 mental case kids and 2 teachers on a yellow school bus heading to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. I know it sounds like torture, most Yancey field trips were, but Mr. Brunner, our Latin teacher, was leading this trip, so I had hopes. Mr. Brunner was this middle-aged guy in a motorized wheelchair. He had thinning hair and a scuffy beard, and a frayed tweed jacket which always smelled like coffee. You wouldn't think he'd be cool, but he told stories and jokes and let us play games in class. He also had this awesome collection of Roman armor and weapons. So he was the only teacher whose class didn't put me to sleep. I hope this trip would be okay. At least I hope that for once I wouldn't get in trouble. Boy, was I wrong. See, bad things happen to me on field trips. Like at my 5th grade school when we went to the Saratoga battlefield, I had this accident with the Revolutionary War cannon. I wasn't aiming for the school bus, but of course, I got expelled. Anyway, before that, at my 4th grade school, we took a behind-the-scenes tour of the Marine World Shark Pool, and I sort of hit the wrong lever on the catwalk, and our class took an unplanned swim. And the time before that, well, you get the idea. This trip, I was determined to be good. All the way into the city, I put it up with Nancy Bobafett, the freckly, red-headed kleptomaniac girl, hitting my best friend Grover in the back of the head with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. Grover was an easy target. He was scrawny. He cried when he got frustrated. He must have been held back several grades because he was the only 6th grader with acne and the start of a wispy beard on his chin. On top of all that, he was crippled. He had a note excusing him from PE for the rest of his life because he had some sort of muscular disease in his legs. He walked funny, like every step hurt him. But don't let that fool you. You should have seen him run when it was enchilada day in the cafeteria. Anyway, Nancy Bobafett was throwing wads of sandwich that stuck to his curly brown hair. And she knew I couldn't do anything back to her because I was already on probation. The headmaster had threatened me with death by in-school suspension if anything bad, embarrassing, or even mildly entertaining happened on this trip. I'm going to kill her, I mumbled. Grover tried to calm me down. It's okay, I like peanut butter. He dodged another piece of Nancy's lunch. That's it. I started to get up, but Grover put me back to my seat. You're already on probation, he reminded me. You know who'll get blamed if anything happens. Looking back on it, I wish I'd decked Nancy Bumblefoot right then and there. Instant suspension would have been nothing compared to the mess I was about to get myself into. Mr. Runner led the museum tour. He rode up front in his wheelchair, guiding us through the big echoey galleries past marble statues and glass cases, really full of really old black and orange pottery. It blew my mind this stuff had survived 3,000 years. He had gathered us around a 13-foot tall stone column with a big sphinx on top and started telling us how it was a grave marker, a seal for a girl about our age. Oh, by the way, Merry Christmas, guys. He told us the carvings on the sides, about the carvings on the sides. I was trying to listen to what he had to say because it was kind of interesting, but everybody around me was talking. And every time I told them to shut up, the other teacher chaperone, Miss Dodds, would give me the eagle eye. Miss Dodds was this little math teacher from Georgia who always wore a black leather jacket even though she was 50 years old. She looked mean enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. She had come to Yancy halfway through the year, when our last math teacher had a nervous breakdown. From her first day, Mrs. Dodds loved Nancy Bumblefoot and figured I was a devil spawn. She could point her crooked finger at me and say, "No, honey," real sweet, and I knew I was going to get after-school detention for a month. One time after she'd made me erase answers out of old math workbooks until midnight, I told Grover I didn't think Mrs. Dodds was human. He looked at me real serious and said, "You're absolutely right." Mr. Brunner kept talking about Greek funeral art. Finally, Nancy Bumblefoot snickered something about the naked guy on the steel, and I turned around and said, "Will you shut up?" It came out louder than I meant it to. The whole group laughed. Mr. Brunner stopped his story. "Mr. Jackson," he said, "did you have a comment?" My face was totally red. I said, "No, sir." Mr. Brunner pointed to one of the pictures on the steel. "Perhaps you could tell us what this picture represents." I looked at the carving and felt a flush of relief because I actually recognized it. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Brunner said, obviously not satisfied. "And he did this because, well, I racked my brain to remember. Kronos was the king god and... God? Titan," I corrected myself. "And he didn't trust his kids who were gods. So, Kronos ate them, right?" But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. And later Zeus grew up. When Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Kronos, into barfing up his brothers and sisters. "Ew!" one of the girls said behind me. "And so there was a big fight between the gods and the Titans," I continued. "And the gods won." Runner took a long, sad look at Steele like he'd been at this girl's funeral. He told me to go outside and eat my lunch. The class gathered on front of the steps. It's already been 9 minutes. On the front of the steps to the museum, where we could watch the foot traffic along Fifth Avenue. Overhead, a huge storm was brewing with clouds blacker than I've ever seen over the city. I figured maybe it was global warming or something because the weather all across New York State had been weird since Christmas. We'd have massive snowstorms, flooding and wildfires from lightning strikes I wouldn't have been surprised if this was a hurricane blowing in. Nobody else seemed to notice. Some of the guys were pelting pigeons with Lunchables crackers. Nancy Bobofit was trying to pickpocket something from some lady's purse, and of course Mrs. Dodds wasn't seeing a thing. Grover and I sat on the edge of the fountain, away from the others. We thought maybe if we did that, everybody wouldn't know that we were from that school. The school for loser freaks who didn't make it anywhere. Detention? Grover said. Nah, I said, not from Mr. Brunner. I just wish he'd lay off me sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius. Grover didn't say anything for a while. Then when I thought he was going to give me some deep physiological comment to make me feel better, he said, "Can I have your apple?" I didn't have much of an appetite, so I let him take it. I watched the stream of cabs going down Fifth Avenue, and I thought about my mom's apartment, only a little ways uptown where we sat. I hadn't seen her since Christmas, so I wanted so bad to jump in a taxi and head home. She'd hug me and she'd be glad to see me too, but she'd be disappointed. She'd send me right back to Yancey, remind me that I had to try harder, even if this was my sixth school in 6 years. I was probably going to get kicked out again. I wouldn't be able to stand the sad look she'd give me. Mr. Brunner parked his wheelchair at the base of the handicap ramp. He ate celery while he read a paperback novel. An umbrella stuck up from his chair, making it look like a motorized cafe table. I was about to unwrap my sandwich when Nancy Bobofit appeared in front of me with her ugly friends. I guess she'd gotten tired of stealing from the tourists and dumped her half-eaten sandwich on Grover's lap. Oops! She grinned at me with her crooked teeth. Her freckles were orange as if somebody spray painted her face with liquid Cheetos. I tried to stay cool. The school counselor had told me a million times, count to 10 and get control of your temper. But I was so mad, my mind went blank. A wave roared in my ears. I don't remember touching her, but the next thing I knew, Nancy was sitting her butt on the fountain and screaming, "Percy pushed me." Mrs. Dodd materialized next to us. Some of the kids were whispering, "Did you see the water?" Like it grabbed her. I didn't know what they were talking about. All I knew is that I was in trouble again. As soon as Miss Dodds was sure poor little Nancy was okay, promising to get her a new shirt at the museum gift shop, etc., etc. Miss Dodds turned on me as if there was a triumphant fire in her eyes, as I'd done something she'd been waiting for all semester. "No, honey, I know. Monthly thing works. That wasn't the right thing to say. Come with me," Mrs. Dodds said. "Wait," Grover yelled. "It was me. I pushed her." I stared at him still. I couldn't believe he was trying to cover for me. Miss Dodds scared Grover to death. She glared at him so hard his whiskery chin trembled. "I don't think so, Mr. Underwood," he said, "but you will stay here." Grover looked at me desperately. "It's okay, man," I told him. "Thanks for trying." Honey. Miss Dodds barked at me. "Now." Mrs. Dodds barked at me. "Now." Nancy Bobofit smirked. I gave her my deluxe "I'll kill you later" stare. Then I turned to face Miss Dodds, but she wasn't there. She was standing at the museum entrance, way at the top of the steps, gesturing impatiently at me to come on. How did she get there so fast? I have moments like that a lot, when my brain falls asleep or something. The next thing I know, I've missed something, as if a puzzle piece fell out of the universe and left me staring at the blank place behind it. The school counselor told me it was a part of the ADHD. My brain misinterpreting things. I wasn't so sure. I went after Miss Dodds. Halfway up the steps, I glanced at Grover. He was looking pale, cutting his eyes between me and Mr. Brunner like he wanted Mr. Brunner to notice what was going on. But Mr. Brunner was absorbed in his novel. I looked back up. Mrs. Dodds had disappeared again. She was now inside the building at the end of the entrance hall. Okay, I thought, she's going to make me buy a new shirt for Nancy at the gift shop. But apparently that wasn't the plan. I followed her deeper into the museum. When I finally caught up to her, we were back in the Greek and Roman section. Except for us, the gallery was empty. Mrs. Dodds stood her arms crossed in front of a big marble frieze of the Greek gods. She was making this weird noise in her throat, like growling. Even without the noise, I would have been nervous. It's weird being alone with the teacher, especially Miss Dodds. Something about the way she looked at the frieze, as if she wanted to pulverize it. You've been giving us problems, honey, she said. I did the same thing. I said, yes, ma'am. She tugged the cuffs on her leather jacket. Did you really think you would get away with it? The look in her eyes was beyond mad. It was evil. She's a teacher, I thought nervously. Not like she's gonna hurt me. I'll try harder, man. Thunder shook the building. We're not fools, Percy Jackson, Mrs. Dodd said. It was only a matter of time before we found out. Confess and you will suffer less pain. I didn't know what she was talking about. All I could think of was that the teachers must have found the illegal stash of candy I'd be selling out of my dorm room. Or maybe they'd realize I got my essay on Tom Sawyer from the internet without ever reading the book. And now they were going to take away my grade. Or worse, make me read the book. Well, she demanded. Your time is up, she hissed. The weirdest thing happened. Her eyes began to glow like barbecue coals. Her fingers stretched, turning into talons. Her jacket melted into large, leathery rings. She wasn't human. She was a shriveled hag with bat wings and claws and a mouthful of yellow fangs. She was about to slice me to ribbons. Then things got even stranger. Mr. Brunner, who'd been out in front of the museum a minute before, the wheeled his chair into the doorway of the gallery, holding a pen in his hand. What ho! Percy, he shouted and tossed the pen through the air. Mrs. Dodds lunged at me. With a yelp, I dodged and felt talons slash the air next to my ear. I snatched the ballpoint pen out of the air, but when it hit my hand, it wasn't a pen anymore. It was a sword, Mr. Brunner's bronze sword, which he always used on tournament day. Mrs. Dodds spun me around with a murderous look in her eyes. My knees were jelly and my hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the sword. She snarled, Die, honey. And she flew straight at me. Absolute terror ran through my body. I did the only thing that came naturally. I swung the sword. The metal blade hit her shoulder and passed clean through her body as if she were made of water. Hiss! Mrs. Dodds was the same castle in Power Fan. She exploded into yellow powder, vaporized on the spot, leaving nothing but the smell of sulfur and a dying screech, and a chill of evil in the air. As if those two glowing red eyes were still watching me. I was alone. There was a ballpoint pen in my hand. Mr. Brunner wasn't there. Nobody was there but me. Jesus! This is taking incredibly long. My hands were still trembling. My lunch must have been contaminated with magic mushrooms or something. Had I imagined the whole thing? I went back outside. It started to rain. Grover was sitting by the fountain, a museum map tilted over his head. Nancy Bobofit was still standing there, soap from her swim in the fountain rumbling to her ugly friends. When I saw her, she said, "I hope Mrs. Kerr whipped your butt." I said, "Who?" "Our teacher, duh." Nancy blinked. We had no teacher named Mrs. Kerr, and I asked Nancy what she was talking about. She just rolled her eyes and turned away. I asked Grover where Mrs. Dodds was. He said, "Who?" But he paused first, and then he looked at me, so I thought he was messing with me. "Not funny, man," I told him. "This is serious." Thunder boomed overhead. I saw Mr. Brunner sitting under his red umbrella, reading his book as if he'd never moved. I walked over to him. He looked up, a little distracted. "Ah, that would be my pen. Please bring your own writing utensil in the future, Mr. Jackson." I handed Mr. Brunner his pen. I hadn't even realized I was still holding it. "Sir," I said, "where's Mrs. Dodds?" He stared at me blankly. "Who?" "Who?" "The other chaperone, Mrs. Dodds, the pre-algebra teacher." He frowned and sat forward, mildly concerned. "Percy, there is no Mrs. Dodds on this trip. As far as I know, there's never been a Dodds at Nancy Academy. Are you feeling all right?" And that is the end of the chapter, guys. Merry Christmas! And I will see you all in the next video. The Real Slim Shady, out!